Okay, welcome back to the Midnight Collective podcast. Once again, this is your host, Eddie, and today we have something special for everybody. Like I've been alluding to the last week or so, we did a collaboration today with a fellow podcaster in my area. Her name is Kelsey, and she does the Who Would Have Thought podcast, which is a podcast about mental health and self-love. And we had a great conversation today about relationships and new perspectives from men and women. And I think we had a lot of good topics and we had a lot of great dialogue. It was very easy for us to jump into that conversation, and I think that you guys are all going to love it. So I'm going to post that in right after this introduction, and I hope everybody likes it. And today we're going to be talking about bridging the gap. We're going to look at two perspectives between men and women and how they kind of come together and can form this cohesive bond.
Yeah, and I'm super excited. This is something new to both of us, to talking about the different perspectives. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, same. This is definitely a new thing, and we're ready for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Today we're here talking about some topics that we kind of came up with together, and we're going to go into some things that are kind of unknown questions and questions that I think a lot of people have and we thought a lot of people would have or want us to talk about. So, Kelsey, you want to start with the first question?
I feel like a question that really stood out to me was, how has hookup culture distorted emotional intimacy?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that hookup culture is a huge thing that plays a role in this generation. And I know from experience from both sides that it definitely has caused a lot of issues. And I think a lot of people think of intimacy as just lust.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being away from hookup culture has showed me that there's so much more to intimacy than just lust.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's right. I think a lot of people put intimacy in the same category as lust, like it only has to be physical. Personally, I'm the kind of person that wants to, have the deep conversation. That's intimacy. A love language of quality time, like that's a form of intimacy. So I think that hookup culture has distorted the generation now because most people are growing up and that's all they want. They just want somebody to be next to. They're just lonely.
Yeah.
They just want somebody for the night or for the week or whatever the case is. And for the people that are out there like searching for a partner or searching for someone to build their life with, I think that's the whole reason it's distorted, is because I feel like a lot of women don't feel like men's intentions are genuine because that's what they think that they want, or because the man isn't really portraying somebody that wants to be intentional with what they're doing. So hookup culture has changed that aspect where it's a lot harder for men and women to find partners because either one is looking for a hookup and the other isn't, or both is, or both aren't, but they don't want to believe that the other isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's also caused a lot of problems in finding a partner because it's so easy to have this false sense of connection through hookup culture and feeling like, well, I can just hook up with this person and I'll get some comfort for the night.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't want to have the commitment of everything else that comes with the
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And I think personally, as a woman, I feel like yes, men play a big role in hookup culture, but I think so do women. And I think if a lot more women didn't give into hookup culture, it would kind of force men to have to also not participate in it.
That's true.
If I feel like from the perspective of a woman, if you tell a guy you don't want to, and that's all he's looking for, he can easily go find that
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel if a lot more women just kind of stood on business and didn't do it, it would kind of force men to have to get their act together and put more effort in than just hooking up with someone.
Yeah, and I think that's right too. If women didn't participate, then men wouldn't participate, and vice versa. it's a lot of like what you're willing to accept. And I think boundaries is something that's huge nowadays, is that,
Yeah.
do you have your own boundaries? Can you respect somebody else's boundary? And, if you have a boundary, but you don't use the boundary, then it's like, what's it there for? So I think that also plays into that too, is just stand on business and keep the boundary up. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also, I feel like a lot of women, because hookup culture is so um, prominent, like if they feel like they have to settle for that,
Mm-hmm.
because they feel like, well, if I don't hook up with him, like he is not going to stay with me.
Exactly.
And I feel like it goes back to like, you have to have your boundaries and stand on them. And like, if people don't want to accept that, then okay, they leave and that's it, like, but yeah, I think a lot of women feel like they kind of just have to settle for that, or they feel like, oh, if I do this, he's gonna like me more.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, I don't think it's true. Um I feel like a lot of men already know what they're gonna use a woman for, or like what
their intentions
are from the beginning. So I think if a man just wants to hook up with you, he's just gonna hook up with you, and
and I think that it even changes, and that can kind of go into our next question too, is what are men really looking for in a partner, and what are women looking for in a partner? And I think that men know, I don't know if you've ever heard that saying, but like a man knows within the first week to 3 months that they either want to be with you or they don't.
Yeah.
And I think that plays heavily into that. Like that's a real thing, if you go out with somebody and you spend time with them and you see a future, like you're going to want to build that future, right? Even if it is just, the first date, you guys go home and that happens. And then after that, you'll know, like, do you want to be there, or was that just what it was, right? But I think men nowadays, especially men that are in like that growth phase and that growth stage of life where they just want to do better and like be better. A lot of men are just looking for someone that will reinforce them, because, men generally want to feel respected. They want to feel valued. They want to feel heard. And I feel like that's something that doesn't really get brought up or done a lot in today's world, where, a lot of relationships become transactional, where it's, if you do this, then I'll do that.
Yeah.
If you give me this, then I'll give you that. And I feel like that's where a man is, at his worst, or on the down, where he just wants to come into something with somebody that also wants to give, instead of it be transactional. And, men just want like a safe place to be.
Yeah.
Like they just want to be themselves with somebody.
Yeah. And I think it's true. I think especially nowadays, a lot of women have this idea of, they've been hurt and they've had bad interactions with men. And so they have this idea that just like all men are bad.
Yeah.
And so with that, I feel like then they get this kind of like pettiness to them, or this like get back of like, well, they're all bad anyway, so I'm just going to take what I could take from him and I'll settle for that.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's like, there's so many times that I'll hear women say like, oh, well, like if he cheats, at least like he has money and he's like, and I'm like, that's crazy. Like, but it becomes this transactional thing of like, they're not really being there for the person, and because they really care for them and they want to build with them, but because of what they can give them.
Yeah. I think that's a good point where women have been hurt and they just, whatever you can get, and then like just dip, right? And I think that men have that also, where like a man will go through a relationship and come out of it, hurt or embarrassed, or feeling like they just didn't do enough or do what they were supposed to do. So they go out and they look for just flings, and oh, well, this girl likes me, but I don't like her, but she takes me to Dodger games and like we can go do things, and like she can pay for it, and like I'm going to use that. And I think that that's like the wrong mindset. Like people always say like, don't disturb somebody's peace if you don't need to. And like that's a heavy thing that I guess needs to be realized a lot more often.
Yeah. And I think women also kind of look for the same thing in a partner, like just mutual respect, safety. I feel like reliability is a huge thing also. And like, I think as women, like leadership like, I think a lot of women look for leadership in a man, and I think that's something that lacks very heavily in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of men. And I think because they lack all of those other things, they don't respect women. They
Mm-hmm.
don't. They're not reliable. They're not consistent. So it's like, if you're not all of these things, how could I expect you to like lead me anywhere? You
Yeah.
know, like I wouldn't trust a man to like lead me somewhere if they don't have all of these characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in general, it kind of goes back to like people being hurt. And then I think they base their self worth, their self respect off of like their experiences that they've had in dating. And then it reflects on like the partners that they choose in the future. You
Yeah.
know, like if a man doesn't respect himself, and same vice versa for a woman, I don't think they're going to choose someone who respects them in
Yeah.
return, you know?
Yeah.
So it just becomes this cycle of people like just not healing,
Yeah.
not taking the time to heal really
Mm-hmm.
from past experiences, and just continuing to choose the same type of experiences and partners in different people because they don't want to like take a look at themselves. I feel like, or even, yeah, I feel like take a look at themselves, because I think sometimes people want to put the blame on the
Yeah.
other
Not
partner.
taking ownership.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which, not to say like, yeah, you know, the other people aren't at fault at times, but it's also like, if you keep choosing the same people, you have to take a look at what am I giving off, or what am I accepting
Mm-hmm.
that keeps attracting these same types of
Mm-hmm.
people.
And I think that, that kind of goes back to the boundaries too. Like what are you willing to accept, and what are you willing to put up with, from a partner? Like, and that was a good point about traumatic relationships previously. Like you can have a relationship where something happens or you were treated a certain way, and then they get back is the next person, you treat them that way and see how that works out for you,
Yeah.
or you look for specific things that were wrong with that previous partner, and you look for somebody that is the opposite of that.
Mhm.
So you're not even caring about the other stuff about them or who they are and their values. You just want to make sure that they don't do this
that
one thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing too.
That is a big thing. Like, I think there was a word for it, but I forgot about it. But I had thought about that like a while ago too, and I realized that too. Like, often, yeah, if a girl gets cheated on, that's all she's looking for the next person to not do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as long as he doesn't cheat on me.
Mm-hmm.
But he could maybe be like so disrespectful, or not know how to communicate,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever the case is. But they're like, well, at least he's not cheating on me.
And that's like their bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, at least this isn't happening, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just creates, again, a cycle of like, you're not choosing better. You're just kind of choosing a little bit above the bare minimum,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of women are scared of being alone. I don't know if it's the same for men. I think a lot of people in general are scared.
I would agree. It's the same for men. Yeah. Men don't want to be alone. I mean, men can be alone. Mm-hmm. But a lot of men, like I said, like they crave being respected and being valued by somebody or something, mm-hmm. right? So like men thrive when they're in a setting that they feel on top, right? And that's not necessarily has to be like a dominance thing, mm-hmm. or something like an ego thing, right? It could just be something as simple as like at work, you're the boss, right? Or at school, like you're the smartest kid in the class. Mm-hmm. Like those things make somebody feel valued. And I think men in general like need to feel that a lot more than women do, because women are valued as being women, right? Mm-hmm. But men in the world are always, we have to provide something. Yeah. We have to put in something to the world, or we're not, in our own minds, we're not valuable. And, that's kind of the mindset that like needs to change, is that we're valuable by just being men. And in a partner, being valued by that one person, like that's like our bare minimum. Mm-hmm. Like one of those things where as long as I'm valued, as long as she hears me and like I can talk freely, like I'm good. Everything else, like she can hit me. I don't care. Yeah. And like one of those things is it's like those will be overlooked. And, in the same way that you're saying that like women will overlook things for men, and value just goes a long way for sure.
Yeah. I think being scared of being alone is will put you in a lot of relationships that you shouldn't be in, you know, because
Mm-hmm.
you're not thinking about anything other than just the fact that you don't want to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really considering everything else.
And you'll look for somebody that has no business being with you,
Yeah.
and you have no business being with them. And it's just like, I'm willing to accept this because I don't have to spend nights alone.
Yeah.
Or I don't have to, like, I have somebody to text all day. Like,
Yeah.
and that's like that's a big problem. You know, I would say on both ends, just finding that place where it's like, you need to value like who you're talking to and like what you're doing, because time is precious. Like, we don't have a lot of time, you know, and like life's short.
Yeah.
Like, it could be done tomorrow, it could be done in a year, and you could waste 3 months of your life just like being with somebody or talking to somebody that wasn't really going anywhere, and you knew that the whole time.
Yeah.
So being alone is such a high driver to, you know, bad relationships and bad experiences. And it's just one of those things that like you have to realize yourself, though. Like, people can tell you all day like, hey, you don't really belong with that person, or like, I think you should get out of this relationship. But you know, we as human beings are always so stubborn to like, no, I'm good, like I know what I'm doing, you know, this is my life. But it's things that we have to accept feedback a lot more to be able to realize like, oh, like this is not a good time in my life.
Yeah. I think it takes a lot of self-awareness and like self-reflection too, to be able to accept it doesn't mean that everyone's going to be right, but at least to look at a different perspective and be like, well, maybe they see something that I don't, you know. But yeah, I feel like going back to saying like about what people being scared of being alone, I feel like it's very important for someone to take the time to be alone, to build that trust in themselves, because I think going into the next question of how do we stop keeping score and start building trust, I think coming from someone who has had like a lot of trust issues, I think I've learned that trusting, you never really know if you're going to be able to trust someone 100%. Like, obviously, I think actions speak louder than words always. And taking a look at people's actions and characteristics and patterns over time will show you if you're able to trust them and rely on them. But I think it comes with having trust in yourself at the end of the day, and knowing that no matter what happens, if someone, you know, does you wrong or whatever, at least you trust yourself enough to know that you can handle that situation. And I think that's why it's important to like have that time to build trust in yourself to be able to trust other people in the end. But how do you feel like we would stop keeping score?
I think you said it best. Like, having to build trust in yourself will help you build trust in others. And I think that, you know, keeping score is like one of those things that people will do internally, and it may not even be on purpose. It may not be like, you know, let me write this down every time it happens or something. But a lot of people focus on like the things that go wrong and the things that like are mess ups. You know, somebody does something to the other, you know, whatever it is. And so you hold those against that person, you know, not allowing them to rebuild trust.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of those things where it's like, you have to be able to like see what happened, fix it or let it go. And if you decide to fix it, like, you have to put it behind you to rebuild the trust again. And it's hard to rebuild trust with people that have broken trust, because it's like one of those things that it's not something that you should be able to rebuild most of the time. Right.
Yeah.
But, building trust starts from nothing, and then it has to go through trials and tribulations. Like, there's people that know, like, you won't really know your partner or know somebody until you've been, you know, in a fight, till you've argued, till you've, you know, walked away from each other. Like, the low points always define the two people trying to do something with each other. And I think that keeping score is one of those things where it's detrimental to the relationship, you know, relationship or friendship even. Like, you don't want to go tit for tat with somebody
Yeah.
that has wronged you, but building the trust is always going to be either a priority or not a priority. And I think that actions towards the trust or actions toward building, even just as small as something as small as like, have you ever heard of like monthly check-ins with couples? Like they sit down and go over their goals for the month or the year, and like you're intentionally doing that. Like that's a trust action that you can sit here and say, okay, well, this is what I'm committing to.
Yeah.
And I think that building those kind of things through action is like the only way to get past that mindset of like, well, I'm going to keep tabs on everything this person's done to me, and just kind of letting that go and saying, I want to build trust or I don't want to build trust.
Yeah. I think having that communication too is a good, like having open communication and feeling like you could feel safe to communicate with whoever you're with is a good way to also try to not keep score, because I think sometimes, like you said, people try to go tit for tat, like without even talking about things that are bothering them or things that they may have felt like the other person did wrong. And then they just start holding it in and building this resentment, start being like secretly petty or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other person might not even know what it is that's even going wrong. And I think one, it's important to be with someone who makes you feel safe to be able to communicate to them. I think as a woman, like I've heard from many different women, like there's this experience of you bringing something to someone and then they get defensive or they throw it back at you or something. And that causes you to not trust them anymore. You feel like, okay, well now I can't openly communicate to you anymore because every time I do, it's going to be a problem, or you're going to think I'm trying to start a problem.
And I think a lot of men, like, in that specific case, right? A lot of men don't really trust that they can be fully 100% themselves, right? And I seen something earlier today. It's like once a man doesn't feel like they can trust you 100%, they'll give you a version of themselves that you can trust, right? And it's like one of those things where it's almost like a character, and they'll give you a version that like you have no problems with, but internally like they can't give you the 100% because there's a small part of that like was mistrusted or was mishandled. And it's like, okay, well, I need to cut this part off of myself and only give you like 98%, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that part of it is because, going back to what you said about how like they get defensive and like, oh, well, now you're trying to create problems and I'm going to throw it back on you. That's almost like I don't want to say like a coping mechanism, but like it's like a defensive thing where like, oh, like you've seen the part of me that you weren't supposed to see yet or see at all. And so most men will get like defensive over that because now it's a panic. Now you're seeing something that I didn't want you to see, or like I didn't need you to see.
Yeah. Or
like I wasn't ready to show you yet, or they messed up with something and it's like, oh, I got caught. Like, let me fix this. Like, I think you're wrong, and honesty goes a long way. Communication goes a long way. And I think that like somebody's integrity goes a long way, because if you can't be honest with yourself when people aren't around, then how are you supposed to be honest with somebody when you're next to them all the time?
Yeah. I think integrity is a huge thing for both men and women, but yeah, like I think it goes the same. Like a woman has to be honest with herself and know, okay, this is something that I think sometimes women try to like be in like delusional land, and they try to like make excuses for people, and they're like, no, well, maybe he really didn't mean it that way, or maybe he really didn't mean to hurt me, like he said he loves me, whatever the case is. And so you make these excuses, but sometimes you have to be honest with yourself and be like, no, that really did hurt my feelings though, that really did, I'm really not okay with that. But I think sometimes we invalidate our own feelings to excuse the other person and try to make the other person stick around.
And I think that that's exactly what I was going to say, is that goes back to like being alone. Once you're with somebody, you'll almost do anything to stay with that person. And that's where we start to neglect those red flags, and we start to neglect like the things that have been done to us by that person or by others. And it's like, I've been through this before, but I'm willing to stay this time why. And that's something that we have to unlearn. But I
Yeah.
think that, that kind of goes into another question. How are we supposed to redefine what leadership means, right? Or softness and care without shame. Like for me, like being the leader is like the only way, right? Being the provider, being the person that takes charge of things, like that's the way that I'll live my life, right? But the next person won't do that because their partner is too overpowering and they don't feel like they can. There's women that have their masculine energy and then there's men that have their masculine energy, and then those two don't mix most of the time, right? Unless one is willing to give up some and the other is also willing to give up some. But I think that like once a woman feels safe with a man that can lead her, that's where that comes down, and it's all like feminine energy, and then you can be soft and you can that's where your strength can lie, instead of you have to get it done all the time and like you have to do all things. It's like, no, like if somebody's leading you and they're showing you that they can do those kinds of things, that's where you can walk back and just kind of relax and be soft and find your strength in being soft and kind of just not feeling bad about letting yourself be led. And I think that that's a different thing, is that a lot of women don't like to be led anymore because there's most of them that have never found somebody that leads them. So
correctly.
So everybody they meet that will try to, to them it's like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to the women that have never been led, they're like, I can do it. Like, don't worry about it. Like, you don't got to. And from a man's perspective, it's just, well, I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to provide for you and trying to make sure that you can have what you want, but you got to let them. And so I think that goes back to, letting down those walls of like, I have to do it instead, and making it more about, I can let somebody else do it.
Yeah, I think that is very true. It goes back to like women just being hurt, and I think as a woman, you have to give, again, time to be alone, but time to let yourself experience different things, let yourself experience different people. And it's if you've always been used to one type of man, say a man who's not a leader or a man who can't lead, then you're going to believe that there's no men out there that can lead, or you believe that every man is going to like lead you the wrong way. And I think it's you have to let yourself be in an uncomfortable situation sometimes to experience those different types of people and see that there is men out there who can lead, or there is men out there who just are gentlemen, or who just want to be kind for no reason, with no like negative intention behind it, to be able to like rewire your brain and stop telling yourself that there's no good men out there, there's no men who could lead. And I think when you start doing that, and allowing people to be there for you, it does start bringing out that like feminine side of you and that softness, and then you're able to kind of accept it a little bit more. But it is still like different, it's going to be different for someone who's not used to that.
I think that there's I think from our perspective too, like I think there's a lot of women that have never been able to be feminine, like at all. Like they don't know what their feminine energy looks like.
Yeah.
So like when they do finally let those walls down, they're like, okay, well, I'm going to get to be feminine. Like you're almost as lost as we are, or as we were when we were learning how to be this way. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that, being a leader and being like having that mindset of being the provider of the home or the relationship, like that's not something that we are born with. Like we have to learn that through, our own failures and our own trauma and our own experiences. But like, women also like have to learn how to be feminine, but I feel like you only get that if you're given the opportunity to be feminine. And if you're having to grind your whole life and like work your ass off and like do all of that, like you never get the chance to like slow down and like appreciate your own days and like appreciate the things that you've done and grown with.
Yeah. I think it takes also like, again, just finding someone you can trust and finding someone you can feel safe with. I feel like it just goes back to safety. Like if you can't feel safe with someone, you're not going to feel, in whatever aspect, you're not going to feel comfortable letting your guard down and being able to be that feminine woman and soft. And I think,
But that's true though. Like it safety is like the biggest thing, you know,
yeah,
and you could say you feel safe with somebody, but like, are you able to sit down with them and like dump out everything,
hmm,
or do you have to think about the things that you say?
yeah,
And I think that's like a very clear, like, do I feel safe with this person or not? And if you can't sit there and just brain dump, you know, everything, trauma, good, bad,
yeah,
days, like weeks, whatever it is, if you don't feel like you can just sit there and talk, I think that's like a big like signifier of like, do you actually feel safe or not?
yeah. And I think as a woman too, like you always know. Like I don't know if guys get this too, but like there's a book that says like your body keeps score.
Mm,
Like as a woman, like I feel like I don't know if you've ever seen like boyfriend air, like those
no.
trends of like people say you have boyfriend air, but like you could tell when a woman is like in a bad relationship because it will show. Like I feel
Oh,
like it will,
that I've
yeah,
seen. Yeah, I've seen
like
that.
it will really show. Like I feel like you can tell when a woman is starting to lose herself, you
Hmm.
know, and so I think as a woman, like you know when someone's not good for you deep down. But again, it comes with not trusting yourself. You're not trusting yourself enough to know to trust your gut feeling and to trust that you know deep down this person's not good for you or this person doesn't make you feel safe. And again, I think just not trusting yourself. I think if you don't trust yourself, it's gonna be really hard to be feminine and
Yeah,
soft
yeah.
also
Because you
because
also have to be vulnerable. Like you have to be vulnerable with yourself,
mhm,
and like you said, you have to trust yourself. And half of that is, are you able to look inward and say like, okay, well, I can accept this, and I'm willing to like allow myself to feel.
mhm,
Or if you're gonna be, you know, if you're gonna push against it the entire time and more or less be more like I don't know about that, I don't really trust it, you know, I don't think that I can handle that kind of
mhm.
treatment from somebody. And I think that it goes a long way if you're able to be vulnerable with the person that you feel safe with, then you'll figure out your feminine like
Yeah.
side.
I think yeah, vulnerability is a huge thing about being feminine. You know, I to me I feel like feminine traits are like everyone carries like feminine and masculine, right?
Hmm.
But I think like part of being feminine is being able to be vulnerable, being able to be compassionate with others, nurturing. You know, like usually like that's what you think of when you
Yeah.
think of a feminine woman. Um, but yeah, I mean now in this like in the as a modern day woman, we also have to work and we have
Hmm.
our own goals. And I think that's great
Yeah.
too, you know, like I think women should have goals for themselves and chasing their own things.
But I think that should happen like you know, from my aspect, I think that should happen while being supported,
Mhm,
instead of, it's like it's almost should be like a choice,
mhm.
not like a you have to. Like you shouldn't have to go chase your dreams because you have to find a way to live,
Yeah.
right? You should be able to, it should be you're chasing your dreams because that's the kind of life that you've been nurtured into having, right? Not really given, but
Yeah.
like you know, you have a safe place, you have a home, you have somebody to go home to, and you've been given this opportunity that all you have to worry about is chasing your dreams and
Yeah.
is working a job that you want to work, not that you have to work. And I think that goes back to leadership and safety and vulnerability. Like, are you willing to be able to accept that from somebody, from a partner, you know, that can provide that, but also like give you a safe place where you don't have to do those things. It's more of a life choice instead.
Yeah. I think it takes a masculine man to be able to see a woman having those goals for herself and not be intimidated.
Hmm.
Because I feel like I have realized a lot too. Like I would consider it like I don't know if it's insecure men or feminine men or like men who just carry more like there's this whole thing of like men who want to be chased like nowadays
Okay.
and I think and I think that comes I personally don't feel like that's very masculine, you know?
Yeah, I would agree.
Like I feel like the men maybe it's like old school, but I feel like men should pursue women, not
Mm-hmm.
women pursuing men. And I think men who aren't fully in their masculine, they're, I have noticed they're very intimidated by not a woman who's in her masculine, but a woman who just has goals or things going for herself, because then I feel like it intimidates their masculinity, and then they feel, you correct me if I'm wrong, but then they feel like less of a man. And I think it goes into like what you were talking last week of like toxic masculinity. Like I
Mm-hmm.
think a masculine man, a good healthy masculine man will see that and appreciate that. And I think a man who has toxic masculinity will see that and be intimidated by that and feel like, oh, that's taking away from me.
Yeah.
But
Like we don't have the spotlight
yeah,
type thing. Yeah. And I think you're right. Like there are men out there that feel intimidated by masculine women. And and half those people are the ones chasing the masculine women.
yeah,
Like a man is like, oh, I see a woman doing good for herself. Like that's the kind of woman that I want.
mm-hmm.
Right. But then you get that woman, and you're like, oh, well, now I'm overshadowed,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not on top, and I'm not the man in the relationship because she's hustling more than I am.
Yeah.
And I think it takes a masculine man to understand that like there's peaks and valleys in that, right? Where a man will peak, a woman will valley, and vice versa. So like if you're doing really well in your work, in your career, in your schooling, in your life, the man should have his own parallel path to that where he's doing good and he has goals and he's accomplishing things. And it takes a man to like realize that there can be two instead of like one and the other beneath them. And I think that that's a different hard lesson that men have to hear and need to learn, is that, the woman should never submit to the man in the way that you do less or you are less, right?
Mm-hmm.
It should be more of you're a partner. It's a partnership. You guys both have your own goals and dreams.
Yeah.
So you should uplift each other. But neither should feel overshadowed by the other, because it's a team effort instead of, I did this by myself. Like, of course, there's a part to play by each, right? And I think that you can kind of point out to where like one person helped and the other person helped, and like where you were supported for one day out of that whole thing. But a lot of men feel like they can't be with a masculine woman because they don't want to feel like less. And you're right. And that was true.
Yeah. And I feel like it kind of goes into like, what does healthy masculinity and femininity actually look like in a relationship? I think in a healthy relationship, a woman has to be in her healthy feminine and a man has to be in his healthy masculine for it to be healthy. And I think it goes into what you were saying of like, you each need to be having your own goal, like your own life already going for you, and it's a equal partnership, not well, I'm just gonna be taking from whatever you're doing and like leech off that. I think like women who might not have things going for them, they're like, well, I just want to find a man who's just gonna
take care of you
yeah. and I'm set, and like, hey, if that works for some women, like that's
I think that is another aspect of that too, though, right? Like, in my I guess experience and perspective, like a healthy masculine and feminine, like that kind of relationship looks like a man taking care of a woman, right? That looks like, you worked a day, you come home, there's dinner, there's the house is clean, like there's all these things done, right?
Yeah.
And vice versa. Like there's a big part of that where, people don't want to think about like healthy relationship looks like a lot of work. It looks like a lot of like, I'm going to tend to you while you tend to me. Right. And, a lot of people say like, go, don't pour into something that's not pouring into you. Right. And that's a big deal in like a healthy relationship where, a man will see what he provides and what he gives, and a woman will see where she's being provided for and want to be providing in the opposite direction. Like if there's always this ideal that like old school relationship and like traditional relationships, right? Like the man has the outside, the woman has the inside, right? and it's
like the home.
Yeah, like the woman builds the home and the man keeps the home together, or provides for the home so that the woman can build the home. And I think that there's, that could be literal, or it could be just an aspect of like, there's half the life that one is responsible for, and there's half that the other is. And it doesn't have to be physical or like action based, like, one has to clean and cook and whatever. Yeah. But it can be as simple as like, well, where you lack, I succeed, or I will succeed, right? And where I lack, I need you to succeed. And healthy masculine men will want to make sure that everywhere that you're lacking, that they are providing. And I'm pretty sure it's vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as a woman too, like you want to create that safe space, not only in a home, but like in a relationship, like if a man's having a hard day at work, you want to be able to be there for him as a listening ear, and I think to be able to like get into that healthy feminine side, you have to like get to know yourself to be able to be there for the people in your life, and show up presently and in a healthy manner too, because I think also like you have to learn how to regulate yourself emotionally to even be able to do that for someone else,
and I think that is kind of a great way to look at the next question too, is what does self-love look like for a man versus a woman, like nowadays, right? And I think there's a multitude of things you could talk about where it's like, well, years ago this is how we did this, and maybe a couple months ago it was this way. But like, I think that from a man's perspective, self-love is being valued in what they do, and just kind of being respected with whatever they're doing or wherever they're at. But also like pouring into ourselves, like men thrive on routines. Like we need to know like when we're having our coffee in the morning, when's lunch, when's dinner, right? And I think that setting routines in life is something that makes you feel like you have a sense of worth in the world. But also, like going out and having solo things, like, I think that men don't pour into themselves enough, where they don't value who they are. And that's like a big mental health problem, is that, I don't have any value, and what am I providing to the world? Like, right. You don't always have to provide to the world, but just provide to yourself.
Yeah.
So I think like self-love in men really boils down to, what are you doing for yourself on a daily basis? Not even like hourly, but just once a day, do something for you that makes you feel valued and respected. And you'll eventually feel like you like who you are, and you like what you do, and you like, what you give to others, instead of finding worth in what you're getting in other people and what you get from those people.
Yeah. I think also like for women too, self-love is kind of like what you're saying, like routine, but I think more of just like self-discipline, like showing up for yourself daily, like you said, like doing something for yourself, whether it's big or small, but just showing up for yourself daily. Like whatever you say you're going to do, you do it.
With intention.
And not out of like I feel like not out of like punishment, but like out of love, like, no, I love myself. Like I'm going to do these things for myself, like to take care of myself. And I think I started thinking about it in a sense of like, if I would do these things for other people, why wouldn't I do them for myself? If I would show up this way for other people, why wouldn't I show up for myself? And I think if you're someone who's used to just giving a lot, to showing up for others, sometimes you can lack showing up for yourself.
Or even just finding like wins. Like I used to be a kind of person that didn't see wins at all. Like I got a degree, cool. Like that's on my shelf, right?
Yeah.
And so like, even what you were talking about in your last podcast about finding the way to slow down and appreciate the things that you do, and that the things that you've accomplished in your life, like that's a way to show yourself like, you have some worth, and you are worthy of receiving what you give.
Yeah.
But slowing down is like something that men don't often do, because again, like we feel like we have to provide for everybody but ourselves, and being able, just like you said, being able to look at what we're giving others and give it to ourselves, like, has a big impact.
Yeah. I think sometimes too, like women think of self love as um, like, oh, I went to go get my nails done. I went to go
Like
shop.
materialistic.
Materialistic
Yeah.
things. And like, not to say like, yeah, like treat yourself, you know, if
Mhm.
you want to treat yourself. But I think self love also comes with like what you accept from others. I think that's how you can really tell if someone truly loves themselves or not, is the people and the behaviors, I guess, that they're accepting from other people.
Mhm.
Because I think if you have people around you in your life who aren't valuing you, who aren't respecting you, I feel like it really goes to show how little you're respecting yourself by keeping those people around, and how little you're loving yourself by keeping those people around. So I think like having good boundaries, and also just knowing your worth, like relearning your worth if you don't know your worth, is a great way to also kind of like have that self love for yourself, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
So I really hope that this message has been able to encourage men and women to look at the other side, to kind of bridge that gap, and to realize that I feel like we really do have a lot of things in common, and oftentimes we're just not able to have those conversations openly with the, you know, opposite gender, to realize that, and to be able to see like we're really not that different in a
Mhm.
sense, you know. We share a lot of common thoughts, but sometimes we're just not really open to looking at that perspective. So I really hope that this message has been able to encourage you to have those conversations, to look at the other perspective. And I hope that this has really been able to help you guys today. So, Eddie, would you have anything that you would want to tell anybody, or just anything to end it off with?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot, and I think that I hope that this message found the right people, and that there's people that want to hear, like these kind of hard truths and these kind of questions that, like you said, like we don't really get to share perspectives all the time, or there's a lot of people that don't want to. So I hope that, covering some of these topics, it resonated with somebody, and like they feel like they can kind of maybe open this dialogue with their partner, or with people that they're seeking to be their partners, or even just friends, and just kind of talk about perspectives on men and women, and how we can come together to just kind of be better for one another. And that'll do it for this episode today of the Midnight Collective podcast. I want to thank Kelsey and the Who Would Have Thought podcast for having us on today, and for joining us on our own podcast as well. This was a very important conversation. And for those of you, my women listeners out there, please go check out her podcast. It's very good. It's very grounded, very raw and emotional. And I think that she's doing great work with her own stuff, just like we are trying to do here in the collective. So I, very much want to give her props, and thank her for her time for today. And I think that, these conversations need to be had, and they need to be shared. And I'm glad that we got the opportunity to do that today. So, again, thank you everybody for listening. And I look forward to our next episode on the Midnight Collective podcast. Thanks.